Okay. You can hear me now? Okay, that's good. I'll talk this volume. Or maybe a little bit louder. I'm just playing. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay, everybody. Hi, my name is Salih. I'm a design lead at Airbnb, and I'm so excited to talk to you about Lottie today. So a lot of my favorite talks always start with a quote. So I figured I'd start with a quote. And the quote is, "I don't ever want to see an engineer writing animation code again. Never, ever." I said that. I wrote that last night. But in all seriousness, I really don't. I think now with Lottie, we'll be able to avoid any engineer ever having to sit down and write 1,000 lines of code for an animation that's probably going to get changed in 6 months anyways. So, what is Lottie? It's an Android, iOS, macOS, and React Native library that renders animations in real time. In a nutshell, you animate in After Effects, you export that animation data as a JSON file, and then Lottie uses that JSON file to build the animation. And don't worry, I'm going to unpack all the pieces of the puzzle. Lottie was created by these amazingly talented engineers. On the top left is Hernan Teresi. He's based in Argentina. He's kind of the godfather of this whole project. In 2015, he wrote an After Effects exporter that allowed you to get the data out of After Effects. And he also wrote the first player on the web that uses JavaScript. And all the work that we've done at Airbnb is based off of his amazing work. Bottom left on Android is Gabriel Peel. Top right on iOS is Brandon Withrow. And then bottom right is Leland Richardson on React Native. And the four of us work at Airbnb together. So I'm going to go through 4 main things: what Lottie does, how it works, the way we use it at Airbnb, and then I'll start to get you all to understand how you can get started yourself. This next part is one of my favorite parts because I get to really show you not just how Lottie, what Lottie does, but I get to show you how the community is using Lottie. Lottie is really fantastic for animated icons. Any kind of little hamburger menu transition you can dream up, Lottie really excels at that. There's this designer, his name is Eddie Gann. He's based in Boston, and he's been doing this 50-day micro-interaction challenge where every day, every couple days, he posts a new little animation, and he posts the JSON file and the corresponding After Effects file. So you should definitely check him out on Dribble. And in addition, if you want to learn a little bit more about icon animations, we just recently open sourced a collaboration with the Noun Project and a designer, John Caserta, and it's called Modern Pictograms. And it's a set of maybe 26 different animated icons. You can download the source files and the animations from the Airbnb design blog. So to step up higher fidelity, Lottie also works great for animated illustrations. This is how Instacart's using Lottie for their shopper app. They have these little animations within the app that show shoppers different ways to use Instacart better. And they even have little parts where it will tell you, okay, now it's time to go check out. And instead of having just language or just an illustration, they've added a nice little animation to it. Lottie also works really well for logo animations. At Google I/O last year, they had, of course, their own app, and they used Lottie for the logo animation when you boot it up. And this app was made alongside an engineer named Nick Butcher. He's a designer and developer at Google. And this guy is a rock star. He knows everything there is to know about doing animations on Android. He wrote a little article about using Lottie for this logo. And he even said dropping this into the app felt almost like cheating. He never implemented a complex animation in so little time. And so that's why you can see, my quote at the beginning that I want even guys like Nick, who could write animation code easily and really good at it, to actually not have to do it anymore and focus their efforts in other places. Lottie's also really fantastic for what I call scene-to-scene animations. So Eero is a company that makes these home Wi-Fi routers. You place 3 of them around your home, you use a mesh network, you get really great Wi-Fi. The setup process that all these Wi-Fi routers have is, they have to boot up, then they have to find each other, then they turn off, and then they start up again, then they have to find each other again, do config. So it can be a little bit lengthy depending on your setup. And so what Eero did is they took 4 different animations, each one that pertains to a certain part of a setup flow, and they chained them all together to create one long seamless animation. So they have a first section that plays and loops until certain criteria is met. And then when it is, it doves seamlessly into the next one that loops until the next criteria is met. And then do that again all the way through the end. So when you feel like you're watching one thing, you're actually watching 5. And it's really smart the way they use Lottie to do that. We've seen these kind of swipeable walkthroughs a million times. And Lottie does really great at these. This company, Elevate, they make this brain training software, and they used it in a really fantastic way with a combination of vector shapes and images. But this is essentially one long animation. I don't know how long it is, maybe 5 seconds or so. And what they've done is they've tied the play of the animation, the progress of the animation, to the gesture. So all you're really doing is scrubbing through the animation, and you're getting this seamless transition between section 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. Of course, Lottie is great for loading screens and splash screens. This is how Uber Eats uses it. Any kind of loaders, pull to refresh. And then the last one, which is a little strange, because we're talking about an animation tool, but Lottie also does really well with static assets. Lottie is, all the information in the JSON file is vector information, so it's infinitely scalable. And now with Lottie, we've given you the ability to change certain parts of your animation on the fly at runtime. So for example, the New York Times uses Lottie for their logo at the top. You can see at the top on the left, it's black, and on the right, it's white. This is one Lottie file that they're dynamically changing when you go to dark mode. They say turn the color to white, instead of having 2 separate assets, one black and one white. Now that you've seen a little bit about how people are using it, I'm going to really dive deep into how it works, because I'm sure it seems like a little bit like magic. So like I said before, right? You animate in After Effects, you export that data as a JSON file. Lottie uses that JSON file to build the animation. To break it down a little bit more, right? After Effects is the creator, the JSON file is the file type, Lottie is the player. It works the same as your camera phone does. The camera is the creator, MP4 that you get after you take a video is the file type, QuickTime is the player. So again, Lottie is not something that designers use. Lottie is something that designers create for, because it is just a player. So now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper, again, into each of these 3 parts of what makes Lottie work. So raise your hand if you have never heard of Adobe After Effects. Nobody? Everyone's heard of it? That's fantastic. Oh, he's this one guy. It's okay. It's okay.
What brave person.
Is that really it? Is there anyone else? Be brave. Okay. So this is what Adobe says on their website that After Effects is, right? It's a tool that lets you design and deliver professional motion graphics and visual effects for film, TV, video, and web. You know, this program was created in 1993, and it was made with the intent to do video effects and animations. It can do all kinds of complex characters with illustrations. It can do live action things where you're compositing things on top of live action footage. When you turn on your TV, I'm sure that 90% of what you're seeing that's not live action footage is done in After Effects. There's some other tools that do similar things, but you know, After Effects is really the tool of choice for anyone who's working in television. This reel is about 4 minutes long. We're not going to watch the whole thing, but I think you get the point, right? After Effects is really powerful. It's really versatile. It's actually wasn't created to do any kind of UI, product, anything. It was made for television and video production. I can see some of you are chomping at the bit, saying, oh, look at all that stuff. We can do that in our app now. Pause. After Effects is really powerful. You can't do everything that After Effects offers in Lottie. Lottie uses less than a 20th of After Effects capabilities. So you can't just go boot up After Effects and make whatever you want and it will work. It will not work. There's certain things that we've included, and for us the goal is to include as much as we can within a relative space. We don't want to balloon Lottie to be this 3 megabyte library that supports everything at After Effects if most people aren't going to use it anyways. But like I said, even the small amount that After Effects, of the After Effects features that Lottie supports allows us to do a lot of really powerful things with Lottie. So that goes to the second part. You've got After Effects, you've got a way to make these animations. The second part is you need to export them as data. So like I said earlier, Hernan Teresi is the creator of Body Movement, and it's how you get the animation data out of After Effects into a file. It's just, a JSON file is just a structured way to store data. Most of you already know this. This is a typical JSON file, right? First name, John, last name, Smith. It's just a way to have properties and their values. So an example would be a bouncing ball. This might be what the bouncing ball JSON looks like. It's got the frame rate, it's got the width, the height, it's got the name, it's got the color, it's got all the information about the animation in this JSON file. Now when you export using Body Movement, it doesn't look this clean and human readable. It actually comes out like this. All the data's still there, it's just minified, and all of the properties have one letter to make the file size as small as possible. But again, all the information is there. So if you search for the hex value of that color, that blue, you'd find it in the file. So now that you have this file, that's where Lottie comes in. So all it takes is a few lines of code to play the animation on whichever platform you're working in. And keep in mind, you can do a lot more than just play the animation. You can tie it to gestures. So you can have a little slider where you've tied the play to that slider, or a scroll view where you've tied the play to a scroll. Exactly the same as the examples from Elevate that we looked at earlier. You can even change colors. So the one on the left or the right, they're the exact same animation, just change the color at runtime. And we're also working on giving the ability to change any property of the animation at runtime. Stroke widths, opacity, scale, anything. And we're going to keep pushing that kind of functionality in all the future releases of Lottie. Now that you know what Lottie is, what it does, how it works, I'm going to dive a little bit into how we use it at Airbnb. And there's two things to think about here. One is the technical aspect of how we use Lottie. And then the second is how we choose when we're going to use Lottie. So in terms of how, on a technical level, you can't just throw any animation anywhere in our app. We have this thing, it's called the DLS. It's our design language system. Kelly talked this morning about having style guide, having a style guide for your product. Ours is a little bit bigger than a style guide. You can imagine there's over 100 designers and engineers working on one native app. How do you keep them all in sync using the same kind of visual styling? Somebody on one end might be making something for a guest. Somebody on the other end might be making a settings page, but you want it to feel like one cohesive thing. So what we use at Airbnb is a component-based system. So in any given screen, you have a series of components, and they're all reusable components. And each component has a name that is attached to it. And these names aren't just arbitrary names. This is actually what you call them in code. So the designer and the engineer can both say, let's use a regular row for that. And a regular row is what the engineer is going to type and when they're calling that specific component. And so with a component system, I'm sure you can imagine we have hundreds of these. And it's a living, breathing system. Some components get deprecated if they don't get used. New components spin up all the time. There's a specific design side of the DLS team and an engineering side of the DLS team. It's their responsibility to keep the system going smoothly. So of course, we have a handful of specific components that accept Lottie animations. So any designer that wants to put a Lottie animation in their product can use one of the components that already exists, or they can go through the process of making a new component if they need to. So that's the technical way of how we use Lottie in our native products. And the next question is, when do we use Lottie? Because we don't want to just throw 100 animations in the app all at the same time for no good reason. There's three things we think about: educational moments, moments that we need to create continuity, and times where we want to reinforce emotions. So an example of an educational moment is we have a partner flow where we need to verify a user, and we need them to take a photo of their ID. So instead of just having typed, this is, before you book, let's add your ID, instead of just having an illustration of, a little character with their phone and an ID, we try to add some more information, more storyline in this narrative. So at the very beginning, we have a light turning on and the ID becoming bright. It's supposed to kind of tell you, make sure that your ID is lit properly. And then the next one, we have the phone kind of, focusing in, making sure the ID is fully in, so that you understand that that's exactly what you need to do. And so we try to use animation to tell a bigger and broader story whenever we need to educate somebody. We also use Lottie when we need to create continuity. So you can see this is kind of like the first page of our app. We have this search bar at the top with a little magnifying glass, and when you either swipe down or you tap the bar, it expands out to more selections. And so in order to create a little more continuity with that interaction, we tried to have the icon change from a magnifying glass into a globe. So that you're not really going somewhere new, you're just going to a modified place. And then the last thing is we really try to reinforce emotions using animation. So this is a project that's ongoing right now where when you book an Airbnb, we want to serve you up a special little animation depending on the city that you're going to be traveling to. Because some people search around for Airbnbs for weeks. They ask their friends about neighborhoods. It can be a lengthy process. And oftentimes when you book, it's really exciting. This is the first step in your journey to travel to this exciting place. And so we want to match that excitement when you get to the screen, after you book. And so that's why we try to use Lottie to add a little bit of extra emotion and excitement to reinforce that this is an exciting moment and we're here with you. So now you can see how we technically use Lottie, when we decide to use Lottie. We're not just slapping animations anywhere. We have some guardrails here. Before I talk about how you all can get started with Lottie, I want to take a step back a little bit and talk about what kind of tool Lottie actually is. So a movie like Monsters University, right? It's got 100 different artists. There's an artist just working on lighting. There's an artist working on hair simulation. There's somebody working on texture. It's this massive team of all these people working to achieve the final product of the movie. But before you get to this amazing final product, there's a step before that. There's a group of concept artists. And these artists, they use pens and paper and ink and clay. They make sculptures. They work in a totally separate medium. And they're given lots of room to iterate, try character designs, quickly change directions. You know, what if his hair was red? What if his hair was blue? And so you have these two sets of artists working on the same project, but in different mediums. And oftentimes, you know, it feels like when you're working on a product that the designer and developer is the same thing. Designers are basically creating concept art, and developers are creating the final product. You know, a designer has to do all the redlining and figure out the space between elements. And all the work they did in Sketch, it actually has to be remade in whatever platform you're gonna work in. And so Lottie is one of these really rare opportunities where a designer can step back and not just create concept art. They can create something that's actually gonna go into the product exactly as they created it. And there's not a whole lot of tools that allow you to do that. And I think moving forward, as software development gets more sophisticated, I'm gonna be looking for the tools that allow designers to do this, free up engineering cycles to do better things. So now, I'll just go in a little bit about how you all can get started just playing around with Lottie. We have a really big repository that we're trying to build up at airbnb.io/Lottie. And it's supposed to be the hub for everything Lottie, whether you're trying to create for Lottie or you're trying to implement with Lottie. We're trying to make sure that all the information you need is there. For designers, it has a lot of great information about getting started, how to get After Effects, how to download the body movement extension. And then it also has information about this great tool that some folks in the community have made. It's called LottieFiles.com. So LottieFiles.com it's an online repository of animations compatible with Lottie and body movement on the web. It also gives you the ability to upload JSON files for your own testing. It was created by Shafiu Hussain and Natu Adnan, who are based in Malaysia. I think literally 3 days after we released Lottie to the public, these guys bought this domain and made this site. So they're really passionate about Lottie, and they're really helping us a lot. And so not only is this a repository of animations, they have provided these fantastic testing tools. So we have a Lottie app in the Google Play Store and a Lottie Preview app in the App Store. And what Lottie Files allows you to do is you can take any JSON file that you've exported from After Effects, you can drag it onto their website. It'll use the web render to play it so you can see if it's getting correct. And then you can use either the Lottie app on Android or the Preview app on iOS to test your animation to see if it's actually gonna work on the platform that you're working in. So I want everybody right now to download the Lottie app. We're going to do a little demo. I'll wait. Sound guy, you too. I hope we crashed the internet. I'll wait till I start seeing some people looking up. Some of you have some slow connections. So if you're on Android, you can tap the first line animation viewer, and then there's a little QR code icon. Just tap that, and then scan the QR code. And if you need to get up and come closer, just feel free to do it. But what I did was I made this animation. I uploaded it to Lottie Files. Lottie Files gave me a QR code, and I just copy and pasted it into this keynote. And so that animation was made in After Effects, exported as a JSON, and now Lottie is rendering it natively right on your phone. Don't worry, all the rest of the slides have the QR code, so if you missed it, you'll be able to get it. So yeah, back to my quote from the beginning, right? I really think there's an opportunity for engineers to stop writing complicated animation code forever. And I think Lottie is a really good start. It does a lot of really powerful things. And me and the team at Airbnb, we're improving it on a monthly basis. We're listening to the community, getting feedback. And I think that it's going to grow as the years go on. I really do want, writing animation code to turn into like vinyl records, Like it's something you do for fun if you're trying to be cool at a party. But like when you actually do want to listen to real music, you just open up Spotify, right? You use the right choice. So that's how I want writing animation code to be viewed. And so that's the end of the talk. Hopefully you all kind of get a good understanding about Lottie, what it is, how you can use it. Again, feel free to reach out to us at Airbnb with any questions you have. We can be reached at lottie@airbnb.com. And I'll be here all day. I got a bunch of Lottie stickers. If you want a sticker, just find me, tap me. I got a whole bag of them right here. And we have some time for questions, so anybody has any questions? Yes, sure.
One of the most common animations which are difficult to do at times is transition animations from one screen to another, both for iOS and Android. Can it handle that well?
So earlier we talked about, you can change color at runtime, and then we're trying to add the ability to change any property at runtime. So one thing we're really working on hard is the ability to make a transition in After Effects, and then replace each of the keyframes with the start value and the end value for the transition. And you can do it on iOS right now. It's a new feature that we just added. And if you go to airbnb.io/Lottie, you can see some examples how that works. We're still working on the right way to do it on Android, but the idea is that you will have that ability to do that with Lottie going forward. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Is there a difference in what can be, played, if we're looking at Lottie as the player, played on Lottie versus what is controlled? You mentioned like stroke, for instance, gaining that ability to control it. So if there was some type of animation that did some type of changes on that stroke that was in the JSON file, is Lottie able to actually render that and it just can't be controlled, or it just can't even render that as well?
the goal is that anything that you can render, you can control. You know, After Effects works with keyframes. So you set a keyframe for a value of 0, and then later you set another keyframe for the value of 1, and it interpolates in between, right? So with Lottie, we're trying to give anybody the ability to change any keyframe, to add new keyframes, to change any value of any property throughout the animation. So right now on Android, you can only change color, but the idea is that you'll be able to change anything.
When you were talking about the components before, and like which area could be replaced by essentially a Lottie player, that's the way I interpreted. How, and maybe this kind of goes back to the transitions as well, but can I move that text to a new area or new page, or is it more of like I have to create the animation? Basically, can we have live data that's dynamic and changing within the app be included with that animation, or is it only static things that I have to create within the After Effects player?
Well, again, like Lottie's going to build the animation right there at runtime. So right as it's being built, if you need some live data to be funneled into the animation, you can do that right as you build it. So let's say, for example, you have an app that has a home thermostat thing, right? And you needed to get the temperature of your home real quick so it can choose to show your home as blue or red in the animation of the little house. You can grab that data right now, load the animation, replace the color with whatever you want, and render the animation. And that's the idea behind kind of the dynamic things we're trying to add. And that's how we're going to try and accomplish using it for animated transitions. So you'd make a transition of something going from here to here in After Effects, and then you say, okay, this beginning one, actually that image is down here, and then where it ends is going to be up here, and then all the rest, the interpolation just comes right from the JSON file. Cool. Any other questions? Get some time back.
Everyone's playing with that app.
I know, and so visit LottieFiles.com. They have like hundreds of animations on there that people have contributed. A lot of them are really fun, and it is a fun way to just look at what Lottie can do and sometimes download source files and dig through them and see how animations are built. Because one thing about Lottie is it depends a lot on how someone builds an animation. And actually, this morning was when Kelly was talking about SVG, a lot of those same things ring true for Lottie. You can build an SVG icon a million different ways, and it might break on Android for some specific reason. And if it does, then you need to go back and just change things. So Lottie can be like that sometimes, depending on what features you're using in After Effects. And so just play around with it and see where it goes, and if anything breaks. Sure? Yeah. I wish I put a slide in there. He asked if you can animate static images. And so Lottie does give you the ability to you have static images in your After Effects file. And then when you export the JSON, it comes with a folder called images where it puts all the images in. And then you can reference that in your app. And then you can, of course, replace that image with whatever image you want to. So it does support images as well. I should have put a slide in there about that. Forgot about that. Yeah.
Does Lottie currently support smooth transitions from one animation to another? Like, for example, going from a loading state to a confirmed state, can you switch a spinner into a check mark?
So that's essentially the example, the Eero Wi-Fi example. Okay. That's essentially what they did. They have the 4 animations, and each animation ends right where the next one begins. And so they were able to really seamlessly, between the 2 animations, seamlessly kind of combine them. So you can do that. And also we've added a little extra functionality where if you have one long animation that's a second, you can choose to loop the first half a second and then tell it not to loop and it'll finish through. Cool. I'm excited. I hope I get some emails from some folks here. Just say, I was at Android Summit, and I'll move your question to the top. Thank you, guys.